Howdy, folks. It's a new day here on the channel as we welcome you back in for another edition of the Retro Racing Roundup. Back with the headset mic. Nothing else unusual going on up here. Still on the crappy camera, so a little bit of a dip in quality. Apologies, I cannot get my nice camera to work for whatever reason, and it's really annoying, but at least the audio quality will be back to normal, I guess. I'm not sure. But it's a new day on the channel. Like I said, it's our very first non-NASCAR edition of the Retro Racing Roundup, as we are getting ready now for our first foray into the world of, I guess if pro wrestling is sports entertainment, this is motorsports entertainment, but it's not scripted like pro wrestling. I don't know how to describe this, really. I'll just tell you, it's World Finals 18 from Monster Jam. This was nominated by Ryan Dye. Thank you very much, Ryan. He's got some unusual and outlandish suggestions on the list. I can't wait to get to all of them, but this is a great one to kick off our first non-NASCAR event. If you have an event that you would like to see added to the list, whether it's NASCAR, Cup, Xfinity, trucks, modifieds, whatever, Formula One, IndyCar, karts, IRL, World of Outlaws, IMSA, V8 supercars, more Monster Jam. Put it in the comments down below. Add it to consideration here. And going forward, we will have the opportunity to get what you want to see into the Retro Racing Roundup going forward. But for now, let's get to it. Why not? Here with World Finals 18 for Monster Jam. It's a beautiful week here weather-wise in Las Vegas, Nevada, where Sam Boyd Stadium will play host to its 18th Monster Jam World Finals. If you're not aware, I guess I should point this out probably, the Monster Jam is the most popular and most recognizable sanctioning body of monster trucks and monster truck competition in the world, really. They can do anything from small 10,000 seat or smaller arenas, anywhere to 70,000 seat big stadiums. Monster Jam tours coast to coast in the United States and in North America as a whole. They also hit tours of Europe and Asia every now and then. And every year since the year 2000 up to this point, Monster Jam has had World Finals at Sam Boyd Stadium in Las Vegas. They had a couple of World Finals events that technically aren't numbered like the rest of the World Finals, but they've had World Finals officially numbered, chronological, from Sam Boyd Stadium since the year 2000, where X amount of drivers are always either invited to compete or earn a spot in a set number of available slots. This year in particular, it's at 32. It's been at 32 available slots for quite a few years now. Started with like 16 and then it worked up to like 20, 24. Yeah, it's always a competition to sort of get into, and it's the big reward for all these teams for all the hard work that they put in the calendar year. Of course, the two competition facets up to this point in the World Finals are racing and freestyle. They are held across two different nights, so it is a multi-day event for the World Finals at Sam Boyd Stadium. Monster trucks at this point are sort of past the point of, Bigfoot coming out and crushing a couple of cars and maybe hitting a ramp. I mean, as cool as that is, I mean, we have some destructive innovation happening up until 2017. In the years leading up to this, these guys and gals are just absolutely out of their minds. They figure out that these ginormous trucks with like 2,000 horsepower can do backflips. Yeah, hell, why not? All the way back in 2010, Cam McQueen, the Canadian destroyer, hits the first backflip, and ever since then, it's been a staple of freestyling in Monster Jam, and especially at the World Finals, where they have this big amount of space to work with, one of the biggest stadiums that they go to all year. There are still a few more moves to be discovered, some of which will be discovered on this particular night in freestyle, which is incredible to say the least. But before we get to freestyle, we have to do a little racing, which at Sam Boyd Stadium is just freaking awesome. This is my favorite racing event, or racing venue rather, for Monster Jam. It is an A to B course with these drivers going off of drag racing Christmas tree lights. They thunder down individual lanes, hang either a left or a right, and then they will hit a jump across the finish line. It has been virtually the same since the World Finals started at Sam Boyd Stadium. And there's a reason for that. It's because it works, and it works really well. It puts on some incredible racing with a lot of close finishes. On Thursday night, there are 31 trucks that are locked into the show already. They all make individual qualifying runs to determine the bracket seating for Friday night's racing competition. And now there is this 32nd available slot that is left sort of as an open invitation. A lot of the young gun drivers that didn't quite get an invitation or win one of the required competitions to get in on their own, they have a chance to race in through sort of this B bracket, if you will, or this play-in bracket, rather, to get this 32nd and final spot. That will be won by Tristan England, who is driving Earthshaker, after his opponent flips over through the final turn in the final race. So Tristan England gets the spot there off of some misfortune. A couple of notable happenings here before we get into the competition. Some notable drivers that a lot of the OG fans will be listening and watching for here today. They are present at the venue, but they are not participating in the competition itself. And that is Tom Meents and Dennis Anderson. Meents in Maximum Destruction is the winningest driver in World Finals history. Dennis Anderson, he is the driver of Gravedigger. He's the originator of Gravedigger. He's a lot like Dale Earnhardt in the sense that he's won of a lot of events at a lot of tracks, at a lot of venues all around the world, but has only tasted victory at the World Finals a few different times. But still, even one World Finals title at Sam Boyd Stadium is enough to make your career, and not that Dennis Anderson needs that by any stretch of the imagination. But they both sustained injuries across the course of the 2016-2017 season. They are both not competing here today for the first time in World Finals history that neither of the two of them are on the battlefield at any point in a competition setting. Dennis Anderson even goes as far to announce throughout the course of the weekend that he will actually not ever again compete at the World Finals. And he's removing himself from eligibility going forward. He says he's not retiring, though. And he will go on to compete select events for the rest of the 2017 season, but he will retire before the year's end, so you don't see a whole lot more of Dennis Anderson behind the wheel of Gravedigger, unfortunately. Also, Monster Jam, operated by Feld Entertainment. Apparently, there had been some coordinated fan efforts to protest against Feld at the World Finals. Monster Jam had set out some crush cars that the fans in these big pit parties, these big sprawling fan interaction events, basically, they set out some crush cars that fans could actually spray paint on. And some of these fans took that opportunity to spray paint some things such as Feld is ass and Feld is ruining MJ, among other things. Why is this happening? Well, the last two World Finals, especially in the freestyle department, have been lackluster, to say the least, unimaginative. The courses themselves have been lacking a lot of character and a lot of opportunities for excitement, as well as the scoring system in freestyle itself. And we'll talk more about it later, but basically, there have been some notable scoring gaffes and perceived blights, if you will, on the scoring of the last few World Finals freestyles. So unbeknownst to fans, though, Feld has the solutions to their problems, but more on that a little bit later. We got to go racing first. We are not live. And for the first time in Retro Racing Roundup history, we are not on ESPN. We are on Fox Sports 1, as it is Ryan Lacoste and one of the voices of my childhood, Scott Douglas, on the call. Scott is calling his final World Finals on TV, which is sad, to say the least. He's so incredible. And had an incredible career with Monster Jam on TV. Nobody will ever do it better. I love you, Scott. We are set for this 32 truck field to do battle here in racing competition for World Finals 18. Here we go. Cody Saucier was your quick qualifier in the Monster Energy, and he, for some reason, isn't facing Earthshaker, but instead facing Bryce Kenny in Mohawk Warrior. This race is a lot closer than it should be, but Saucier beats Kenny to the line by about a tenth and a half to move on to round two. Next up is Mark McDonald in the right lane in some truck I've never seen before. And in the VP Racing Fuels mad scientist, Lee O'Donnell, who will get his time in the sun here in just a few minutes, but it won't be right now because he is the first of several drivers who will be disqualified for jumping the start. So McDonald moves on, and O'Donnell says he didn't jump the start, but I mean, you did. You jumped the start. It absolutely happened. In the first of 4 Gravedigger trucks here, Tyler Menninga goes up against Charlie Pauken, one of the freestyle goats in Monster Mutt. Menninga is clearly moving as he's getting ready to punch the throttle, but somehow Charlie is going to red light here? What? Oh, well, Gravedigger wins, of course. The reigning racing champion is Morgan Kane, who is also in Gravedigger. He will face off against the aforementioned Cam McQueen, who himself is a freestyle World Finals champion. Unfortunately, despite having the lead into the final turn, McQueen's freestyle tendencies flare up here, and he hits a slap wheelie and loses the race. Buddy Tompkins and Raisin Kane versus BJ Johnson in the Gas Monkey Garage truck. BJ wins this one pretty handedly, and Tompkins hits the center divider and throws some dirt up in the air. In what will be the very last event for the Metal Militia truck, as the licensing agreement with the clothing company is set to expire, Scott Biden goes up against Scott Buteau in probably my favorite looking truck in the field, the Hot Wheels Firestorm. It looks like Jim Jack's Reptoid did mushrooms. I love it. I love all of it. And we'll get more of it as Buteau beats Biden. Next up is Alex Blackwell, who my Mandela Effect brain had pegged for a former world champion. That is not true. He is substituting for Triple Threat Series champion Justin Stipes, who is normally piloting the Megalodon, but he isn't here for some reason. He goes up against Candace Jolly in Monster Mutt Dalmatian. Closest race of the night so far, but Blackwell beats Jolly by 2/100ths of a second. Our third Gravedigger on the night is one of the overall odds-on favorites to win both racing and freestyle, a 5-time world champion and the son of Dennis Anderson. That is Adam Anderson. He goes up against one of my all-time personal favorites and someone who I cannot believe has yet to win a world title in racing or freestyle. That is Lindsey Wink driving the Lucas Oil Crusader. And remember what I said about Adam being one of the favorites here? Well, it does not go very well. Adam actually hits the wall down the alleyway, breaks a rear steer fitting, and so his night is over here in round 1 as Wink gets away with a sloppy run to take the early victory. Our first of 2 Maximum Destruction trucks is piloted by veteran Neil Elliott, and he is up against Soldier Fortune, driven by Chad Fortune. Neil is going to run way wide out of his chute, but is still well ahead of Chad Fortune, so he will take the win in round number 1. Speaking of Maximum Destruction and Gravedigger, with Tom Meents and Dennis Anderson both on the shelf, that means that only one driver has been at every World Finals now, up through World Finals 18, and that is Mr. Excitement, Jimmy Kohler. Yes, Jim Kohler is a 2-time World Freestyle Champion piloting Avenger, but he is not exactly a lauded racer here, but now he is the most tenured World Finals driver in history. So we'll see what he could do with that little bit of momentum, if you will. He's up against one of the most popular up-and-comers of the time, Bari Musawir, in the absolutely sick zombie truck. Another pretty good freestyler. But these 2 carnage magnates end up putting up 2 great times in racing here, as Kohler is going to get an incredibly rare victory here at the World Finals in round number 1. John Zimmer in Dragon versus Mike Vaughters II in Overkill Evolution. And Dragon has the worst red light of the night so far, so it's an easy dub for Vaughters. A 2-time World Finals champion, Todd LeDuc, driving Monster Energy versus Brianna Mahan in the Scooby-Dooby-Doo. And the 2015 World Racing Champion takes the win with ease. Next up is Colt Stevens in the Fox Sports 1 Cletus truck versus one of my favorite trucks here, Wildflower, driven by Rosalie Raymer. Looks like Wildflower is having some rear steering issues, so it is Stevens with the easy win. Next up is the other Maximum Destruction truck, piloted by Tom Meents' son-in-law, Colton Eichelberger, and he is up against the other El Toro Loco truck, piloted by Becky McDonough. By the way, 4 female drivers in this World Finals. That is the most ever. That is super duper cool. Colton is going to have some problems getting down the chute here, but Becky is going to have some bigger problems as she clips the turn car and throws herself sideways over the jump and cartwheels across the finish line. A Martin Truex reference from Scott Douglas on commentary.
Oh my! She won the race, but did she lose the war?
And yet another Gravedigger appears, this time piloted by another substitute driver, Randy Brown, who is in for the recently retired Cole Vennard. And now here's your Double Down Showdown winner, Tristan England in Earthshaker. And problems for Earthshaker gives this one easily to Gravedigger. Here is another star-studded round one matchup here. One of the great racers who has yet to win a world racing title up to this point. He would do it in just a couple of years. But Jim Cretin in Bounty Hunter, he is going to go up against the younger Anderson son, Ryan Anderson, piloting Son of a Digger. This is a drag race down to the line here. Talk about delivering. It's Ryan Anderson by 5/100ths of a second in the final race of the opening round. Round 2 opens with Cody Saucier and Monster Energy going up against the surviving El Toro Loco truck, piloted by Mark McDonald. And Mark looks poised to take the win, but gets a little bit out of shape right at the end and gives it to Saucier. Here is another first in World Finals history, as it is the first time that the same truck has faced itself. Not to be a crotchety old man here, because I think a lot of what modern day Monster Jam does is pretty cool. They've done a lot of good stuff. But I am not a huge fan of duplicate trucks in the same competition. I get that it's fair to the teams that field multiple trucks at shows across the country simultaneously, but it just looks ridiculous at times like this. And it sort of shuts out some of the smaller independent teams that even if they would get trounced, they deserve the time and the spotlight and not having to work for it so hard out of things like the Double Down Showdown and all that stuff. But whatever, rant over. It's Morgan Kane and Gravedigger versus Tyler Menninga in Gravedigger. Morgan Kane has this one on lock until he hits the divider after pushing a hair too wide out of the turn. He loses by 2/100ths at the line to Menninga. The reigning racing champion is out. Scott Buteau and Hot Wheels Firestorm against BJ Johnson and Gas Monkey. Buteau sends it too deep into the turn and allows Johnson to sneak in and take the win. Alex Blackwell and Megalodon versus Lindsey Wink and the Lucas Oil Crusader, and Blackwell has the cleanest turn of the night so far for a come-from-behind victory. Here comes what should be an easy win for Neil Elliott and Max D against Jim Kohler, an Avenger who is not a good racer here at Sam Boyd Stadium, but I'll be damned if Jim Kohler doesn't get it done here in Avenger. He upsets Neil Elliott and is on to round 3. It's another mismatch on paper here, as Todd LeDuc and Monster Energy is taking on Mike Vaughters II in Overkill Evolution. LeDuc overcooks it into the turn and gives the win to Vaughters, and it is upsets galore all of a sudden. I would argue 5 out of the 6 winners in this round so far were not the favorites to pull it off, and yet here we are. Randy Brown in Gravedigger versus Ryan Anderson in Son of a Digger, and Anderson will post the fastest time of the night as Brown sends it way too deep into the turn here. It is all Ryan Anderson. And now it's FS1 Cletus, driven by Colt Stevens, versus Colton Eichelberger in Maximum Destruction, who lost his race against El Toro Loco, don't forget. But since Becky crashed, they assessed the damage and said that she wouldn't be able to continue, so Colton is allowed back into the bracket as a result. And way to right the ship for Eichelberger here. He will post the fastest time of the night and take the win. Here we go, round 3. Tyler Menninga and Gravedigger versus Cody Saucier, and Saucier will have the most egregious red light from the drop, so it will be an easy win here for Gravedigger, who will just go ahead and post the fastest time of the night just for good measure. That is 3 runs in a row now from this right lane. Where the top time of racing gets posted. It seems like the place to be for now. Here comes another unexpected round 3 matchup, as it's Blackwell and Megalodon versus Johnson in Gas Monkey Garage, and Johnson will just barely eke out the win here to move on to the semifinals. Jim Kohler and Avenger lines up against Mike Vaughters II in Overkill Evolution, and it is another 16.1 from the right lane. Jim Kohler, the freestyler, has won 3 rounds of racing so far on the night. Before this, he had won 3 total races in the last 17 World Finals combined. So it is an insane, unprecedented run for Jim Kohler thus far. Colton Eichelberger and Max Dean now lines up against Ryan Anderson and Son of a Digger, and Colton is out of shape from the green. He nearly puts it up onto the announcer's stage. It is an easy win for Anderson heading into the semis. Who had this Final Four? I want to know. I want to see everybody's bracket. Go dig it up. I want to see it. I bet nobody had it. Here we go. Tyler Menninga in Gravedigger versus BJ Johnson in Gas Monkey Garage. Menninga a little out of shape through the chute, but never cedes the lead to Johnson. Powers through, clipping the turn car to take the win and moves on to the finals. Now it's Ryan Anderson and Son of a Digger going against Jim Cinderella Kohler and Avenger, who will be looking to shock the world. I wish they would show the lights here because this definitely looks like a jump from Ryan, but the win was never in doubt after this as it's Anderson by quite some distance, and it sets up a Team Gravedigger final here. By the way, as of this recording, after doubling his racing win total at the World Finals, Jim Kohler has yet to win another round of racing in the World Finals. Here we go. Menninga and Gravedigger, Anderson in Son of a Digger. Menninga is wide through the chute, Anderson is wide through the turn. It about evens out as they come across the line, and by just that much, it's Ryan Anderson in Son of a Digger with his first World Finals victory. Ryan says he thought he would never win, but says he is proud to do it with and for his dad, Dennis, who is standing right behind him. He thanks him for paving his path in life and in his career. And to close out the Friday night action, Neil Elliott comes out in a Monster Jam 25th anniversary truck to attempt the first ever forward momentum backflip, which is a lot easier to see in action here rather than have me try to explain it. He nails the maneuver and sticks the landing. How about it? It is now Saturday, and the course has changed for freestyle. Of course, with backflips being all the rage, we have backflip ramps across the length of both walls, as well as on either side of this shipping container here. And multiple ramps of various shapes and sizes have been added across the layout. And for the first time in several years, the fountain is back on the course. It was a staple of the World Final for many years, but went away. That was one of the chief complaints of the Feld protesters from Thursday. The other chief complaint was the lack of scoring transparency from the appointed judges. Freestyle used to be scored on an individual basis from 4 judges on a scale of 1 to 10, meaning that the top score would be 40, theoretically. Some snubs and flubs the fans were not very happy about heading into this year's World Finals, as well as some lackluster layouts. This layout already is an improvement. And what is Feld going to do about the judges scoring? Well, they've decided to completely nuke their scoring system entirely and give the fans exactly what they want. They roll out a system that they have not tested at all. They didn't test this anywhere. At any of the small events, they could have done this. They could have done this in Peoria, Illinois, in front of 520 people. They could have done this, I don't know, in Tupelo, Mississippi, in front of 700 people. But no, the first place they rolled this out is at the World Finals, their biggest event of the year. They roll out a new app for anybody in the grandstands to put in a score from 1 to 10. And they will average all of the fan scores up, and that will be how the freestyle scores are determined, down to a decimal out to the thousandth. So 3 digits after the decimal. That is how Feld comes back to these protesters. I mean, this was in place before they knew there were going to be protests, I think. But absolutely dick out play here from Feld, who have handled their critics and handled them well at World Finals 18. And by the way, the system is going to work just fine. I mentioned it had never been tested before, but it works fine. It literally goes perfectly. So that's incredible. Here we go. Alex Blackwell will be the first out for freestyle. He has a few highlights here. Has a cattywampus save, hits the balloon box, then doesn't stick the landing for the first backflip attempt of the night. 6.799 is the first ever fan-voted score in Monster Jam history. Bryce Kenny and Mohawk Warrior is up next. He has some pretty big air and then takes the goddamn fountain out as the second competitor in freestyle. That kind of sucks, but a really solid run overall. An 8.1 will now take him to the top spot. Randy Brown and Gravedigger is out next. He is having a decent run here. Hits a cannonball into the pool, but loses the drive line or something trying to whip some donuts. And the thing literally blows up on him. That is scary as shit. Luckily, he gets out unscathed. Becky McDonough, who crashed in racing, remember, has a pretty decent run here. She hits the backflip and will crash out down the racing chute. One of her horns gets taken up into the crowd as a souvenir. Kristen England kind of gets robbed in the Earthshaker. He hits a stoppie and a moonwalk and a backflip and only gets a 6.8 for some reason. Despite the Final Four appearance, BJ Johnson in Gas Monkey Garage has the shortest freestyle run so far, flipping over early. I hope Colton Stevens got compensated well for his time in the FS1 truck because I hate every second of this thing out on the track. You can hear the goddamn NFL Fox Sunday theme playing at full volume over the stadium speakers for the entirety of Cletus's time on the course here. Absolutely disgusting. Honestly, Colt has the best run of the night going so far before he gets stopped 20 seconds early by the officials. He will still move up to second, though. 2006 World Finals Freestyle Champion Jimmy Creighton hits the track in Bounty Hunter. Best town name in all of racing, Tonganoxie, Kansas. Two things are quickly apparent here on his run. First of all, Creighton has either tuned the motor down or it is laying down because he is not getting after it, and the truck sounds really hoarse. Second of all, this fountain has really slopped up that entire side of the freestyle course, and some drivers are handling it better than others. Jimmy has a couple of cool jumps, but it is not enough to take the lead. It is still Bryce Kenny and Mohawk Warrior with the top spot. The very last on-track appearance of the two-time World Finals freestyle winning truck Metal Militia, this time driven by Scott Biden. Biden hits the cleanest backflip of the night so far and has some pretty good air, but his truck bites hard on just a routine turn, and that is how it ends for Metal Militia. Tyler Menega is really exploring this space and hits a few nice jumps in Gravedigger, but he fails to really impress before he puts it upside down way too early. And now here we go to Mr. Excitement, the two-time world freestyle champion, the king of the fountain, Jim Kohler. He starts a little tepidly, but Kohler backs up, and Jesus Christ, that is some sick air from Jimmy K. And a backflip, the tire is down. Donuts now. He is now just running into shit at full force, and this is the Monster Jam freestyle that I love. Jim Kohler is the man, and now he is the leader to boot with a 9.24. I feel bad for Buddy Tompkins and Raising Cane, who has to follow that, but he flips it early in his run anyway. Same story for John Zimmer in Dragon, but listen to the sound of those little metal pieces that they make when he does flip it here. It's pretty satisfying.
9-4 Dragon, John Zimmer making...
Candace Jolly in Monster Mutt Dalmatian fills the clock and hits every obstacle, but honestly, that's about it. Sick air right out of the gate for Rosalie Raymer in Wildflower. This truck just looks awesome. I cannot say that enough. She hits a backflip and then tries to hit the corkscrew flip off the backflip container. Not the best run of the night, but maybe the most highlights, at least so far. She takes a mudslide as well right after she gets out of the truck. Tom Mentz watches on here as Colton Eichelberger pilots Maximum Destruction. It's honestly a pretty mediocre run, and Colton will end up on his lid pretty early. Look at the stance here as Bari Masauer hits the track in the zombie truck, and he pretty quickly fractures both of the arms on that truck. Look how muddy it's getting on this side of the course. Honestly, all in all, not Bari's best run here. Now, folks, here comes Lee O'Donnell in the VP Racing Fuels Mad Scientist. He hits some pretty nice air right out of the gate here. Honestly, it's a proficient run. It is a proficient run from a technical standpoint. Maybe a top 5 run until we get to the final 20 seconds of the run here. We go from a backflip now to a nice jump, a slap wheelie into the kicker ramp, and what the fuck is that? Somebody call the Arctic Monkeys because Lee O'Donnell has just landed the first ever monster truck front flip. He then goes for another backflip as time expires, totally eats shit, but it doesn't matter. There had been 2 attempts at a front flip before this. Charlie Pocken nearly nailed one in an Escalade in 2008. Tom Mentz also came really close to hitting one in Gothenburg, Sweden, a couple of years before this. But Lee does it. Lee did it. It is so incredible. And Lee says that he called that move the Chucky, I believe, for Charlie Pocken, and is sort of a bit beside himself as he now claims the top spot on the scoring sheet. It is a history-making moment, and I mean, one of the most iconic ones in the history of the sport thus far. Cody Saucier. Good luck following that. He does hit some nice air and combos it into a stoppie, which is pretty cool. He kills the run early after getting into the slop, however. Brianna Mahan is next up in Scooby-Doo. She has sort of that reckless energy that Jim Kohler and Chris Bergeron exhibit from time to time. Not an outstanding freestyle run, but a goofy-looking front flip and another failed attempt at the corkscrew lead to some highlights for sure. Chad Fortune's Fortune and Soldier Fortune turns bad on the first jump as the left front tire breaks off the knuckle and eventually will just fall off, and that is a quickie. Here comes a freestyle world champion, Cam McQueen in Northern Nightmare. He hits some sick air and then intentionally over-rotates on a backflip, hits the gas as the truck rolls back onto its front tires. That was freaking awesome. And a third time is a charm for the corkscrew as McQueen will finally land one. In my opinion, this has been the most solid bell-to-bell freestyle that we've seen so far, but I get that the shock factor from Lee O'Donnell puts him over the edge versus McQueen, but not by much. Morgan Kane and Gravedigger is out next. Something on this truck is squeaking, and it's really freaking annoying. Honestly, it's a mediocre run that is only highlighted by his backflip attempt, which goes awry. He hits the shipping container barriers and gets bounced back onto his wheels. The clock runs out, and then Kane decides to make things exciting, but the scores have already been turned in. Mark McDonald and El Toro Loco hits two of the best wheelies of the night and hits a Kurt Angle moonsault, but breaks the rear axle on the landing. Lindsey Wink in the Lucas Oil Crusader has a decent run with some big air, but flips it before time runs out. And now it's Ryan Anderson looking to be the first driver since Tom Meents in 2002 to double down win the racing and the freestyle titles in the same year. He's a great run going with some big hang time and some nice slap wheelies. He nails a backflip, but breaks the shock or something on the landing and has a soft rollover to finish things off. It was really strong up to that point, too. Here comes Scott Buteau and Hot Wheels Firestorm. He is going to set a record in this run with 4 backflips in the same regulation freestyle. It's sort of mundane outside of that, and just like Morgan Kane, he hits his biggest jumps back-to-back after the clock has already expired. It's close, but no cigar, and Lee O'Donnell is still leading here into the closing stretch. And here is Charlie Pauken absolutely soaring right off the rip, and there goes Charlie Pauken up and over. The 2010 freestyle champion is done for. Adam Anderson, the reigning freestyle world champion, looking to go back-to-back. He has a really solid run going here. He hits some sick air and a backflip, but will break the rear end of the truck on a big air landing. And that's all she wrote for Gravedigger's chances here tonight. 0 for 4. Mike Vaughters II starts off pretty nicely with some big air and overkill evolution, but after the first backflip, the rear of the truck is clearly broken, and every single landing from here is directly on the rear assembly. He will actually get shut down by the officials early after his second backflip. 2 more drivers to go here, and Neil Elliott turns up the wick. He has some nice air, some incredible floor coverage. He hits an unintentional corkscrew backflip and then tears down the floor to the backflip container on the other side and hits a reverse forward backflip. Like, what do you even call this? That was freaking awesome. And then he goes balls out on the last jump as time expires. To me, this is my winner here. That was the best run of the night. The reverse front backflip is really cool, even if it is a little more contrived than Lee O'Donnell's front flip. But alas, the scores are in, and Elliott will have to settle for second by a mere 0.02. Point not 2. Wow. That's a tough one to swallow for Neil Elliott, who will never claim a World Finals victory before the end of his career. And that is such a shame, because this one, I think, deserved to take it personally. Todd LeDuc, a freestyle champion in Monster Energy, is the final truck out. He hits backflip, some big air, then a side flip on the second backflip attempt with a lot of time left on the clock, and that hands the win to Lee O'Donnell in the Mad Scientist truck. He is absolutely beside himself in victory lane. I put in the script that this went on a little bit longer than I thought it was going to, and it's true that this script is about as long as a normal script would be, but honestly, it's kind of flown by. So regardless, we're just going to go straight into it here. And we got to switch up the scoring just a little bit as well. We still score the racing, though, and most of it was pretty good, I thought. A lot of close finishes. The lanes switched up in quality a couple of times through the night, so that was pretty cool. I'll go ahead and give it a 6 out of 10. Now, instead of the finish, we will insert another F. This time it's freestyle, because why wouldn't it be? This freestyle in general is really why most people go to Monster Jam. And this is a pretty classic Monster Jam final freestyle here, if I do say so myself. Certainly in my top 3. I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. lot of crazy shit happening here. I mean, in terms of memorability, just off the strength of a couple of big moments alone, this is an 8 out of 10. Leo O'Donnell hitting the world's first ever monster truck front flip. Culturally significant moment that gets replayed to Kingdom Come, as it should. But outside of that, maybe Randy Brown blowing up, there aren't a whole lot of huge moments that make the rounds out of this. And my opening point for the memorability criteria stands true as well for historical significance. It has transcended Monster Jam itself and sort of has its own place in the cultural ethos of modern day motorsports. Plus, this is a historical World Finals for a number of reasons. Features the most females. It has 2 first-time World Finals champions. It's the first World Finals not to feature either Tom Meents or Dennis Anderson. I should point out as well, Dennis Anderson did miss one, but Tom Meents hadn't missed any up to this point, and they had never both missed one before as well, obviously. So it's also the final World Finals for the voice of Monster Jam, Scott Douglas, and it's also the penultimate World Finals to be held at Sam Boyd Stadium. A lot going on here for World Finals 18 and a lot of good, may I add, as well. So easy 9 out of 10 there. So a big score here. I mean, yeah, it's kind of apples and oranges when you compare it to more traditional, less showy races. And it's been all NASCAR up to this point on this channel. So it is a 31.5, though. That's a great score for Monster Jam World Finals 18. And again, thank you to Ryan Dye for putting that on the list. If you have a race that you want to see here, or an event rather, that you want to see in a future edition of the Retro Racing Roundup, leave it down in the comments below. I'll add it to the list for consideration going forward. If you want to be a part of the voting in the future for future installments of the Retro Racing Roundup, link for the Discord is also down in the description. Come hang out, come join the community. Next week's race has already been voted on. We are back to NASCAR. It'll be our earliest race chronologically so far. It is the 2005 Advanced Auto Parts 500 from Martinsville Speedway. That one will be a doozy. I can't wait for that one. So that's all I got for you. Thanks as always for your kind words and your support about everything going on here on the channel, as well as the Retro Racing Roundup. And can't wait to get back to it next Friday. So that's all we got for this edition of the Retro Racing Roundup. Until we meet again here on Turn 200, I've been Tommy Cook, and we'll catch you in the next one.